Hello my fellow riders, this is Chris at Riding Reviews, and today I'm going to teach you how to do the tappets on your 50cc motorbike. We're going to be doing a video on how to set your tappets on your 50cc motorbike. This should be done about every 2,000 miles because the exhaust outlet, which I will show you in a minute, goes tight, and then if you don't do it for say another 1,000 miles after that, it may start causing damage to your engine. Now on this, the tools that you will need to adjust this is a large flathead screwdriver, a 17mm socket or spanner, a 14mm socket or T-bar, a set of feeler gauges, a 9mm spanner, and a pair of pliers. Now there is a link in the description for all of these parts if you want to get them off of Amazon. If you buy them through my links, then a little bit of your proceeds will come to Riding Reviews, and that will help me out a lot. So let's get started. For ease of access for myself, I have taken off the stator cover. As you can see, there is a stator. You don't need to do this, but this makes it easier for me to be able to demonstrate exactly what we are doing. So for you to do it, you need to undo the flat plate that's on here. Obviously you are going to have quite a lot of fairings and stuff like that in the way. I don't have that problem because I've got my engine here. Also, you are going to have to undo this little viewing cap right here. So you'll be able to see through there, and you'll be able to see usually through there, but you know, there's stuff in the way. Right, so as you can see on the flywheel here, you have a couple of different marks. There's one that says F for fire and T for top dead center, and also an arrow there so that you know which rotation the engine is. You also have a 14mm nut there, and you'll need that later, and I'll show you what to do. So, as I said, I've already unloosened quite a few of the bolts just so that it's easier for me to do it on the video. Obviously, you can take as long as you need, but I have a set amount of time that I've got to do the video. So, when you undo these retaining caps on here, you have to do them anti-clockwise to take them off. They will be tight, so you have to potentially stick the ratchet on there and tap it a couple of times with your hammer or with your hand. Try not to just force it like this, because you've got a tendency of threading the top of the 17mm bolts. If you impact it, then you will find that it usually comes loose. Don't try and heat it up, don't try all that sort of stuff. Just be patient with it, hit it a couple of times and it will come off. Also, you will have one on the bottom. The one on the bottom is probably going to have some oil in it, so I would suggest you wear gloves. So what you have to do is look inside this hole here. So look inside that hole and measure up so that the T is in line in the center of that hole. So there is two top dead centers on this. One of them's real top dead center, one of them's halfway through the drive. So what you've got to do is move it around until you can feel maybe a little bit of movement in that tappet. You will know at that point that it is to where it's supposed to be. So you've got your 19mm spanner, and this one goes depending on which way you're looking, so this will go clockwise also. Loosen this off, the nut, and then there is a little square screw in there that you need to loosen off also. So this is where the feeler gauges come in. You have to make sure that you get a feeler gauge that can do 4/1000 of an inch, because that's what we're going to set these engines at. So the whole point of this is to fit the feeler gauge in between the two bits there. Hopefully you can see that on the video. I've tried hard to make it so that it's easy to do so, but you may not be able to. And what you have to do after that is get your pair of pliers and turn it. Now this is really fiddly, by the way. So turn it until you just start to get a little bit of a bite on there. So that's a little bit of a bite on that feeler gauge, and I will show you like that. That's probably a little bit too much. So yeah. So there's a little bit of a bite on there. Now what you've got to do is get your 9mm spanner, put it on the top. Now I'm going to struggle to do this with all my hands, so let's just hold that there if we can. Now sorry for the shaky footage, but this is a little bit difficult to do with not enough hands. So you put the spanner on the back and hold it on the top of this square nut, and you keep the inner nut stable with the pair of pliers, and then you turn the outer nut so that it tightens everything up to where it's supposed to be. Now you're probably supposed to use a torque wrench on this. I've been doing it a long time, so I know quite well how much torque these things can take. But I will find out exactly. I will put it in the description. I'm sure these nuts are going to be able to take somewhere in the region of, say, 25 Newton meters of torque on a proper torque gauge. So as you can see, it is got a little bit of movement there. I don't know if you can see it on my camera, but there you go. So you then have to do exactly the same on the bottom, and this one is the one that normally goes tight on these sort of engines. As I say, it will go tight after about 2,000 miles. So loosen it off, put the feeler gauge in, tighten it up a little bit with your fingers, get the pliers, and torque that. That's the wrong spanner. Torque that up to where it's supposed to be. Make sure there's a little bit of movement in that feeler gauge. So we got there, and there is. And then a good thing to do once you've finished, before you put it all back together, is get your 14mm T-bar, stick it on the nut. This is on the nut there. Turn the engine 2 fully rotations and re-line it up with that T, and then just check once again that there's some movement in those. If you rock, sometimes you won't be able to pull them up and down. Maybe if you just rock them a couple of times, you should be able to feel there's a little bit of movement. If you want to see what it's like when there isn't any movement, turn it down to the top dead center on the other rotation. So instead of turning it over twice, turn it over once, and then you'll feel that there is no movement in that. So we have the top cover for the tappets. Put that back on. Put the bottom one back on. With your 17mm spanner, do it up until you start to feel a little bit of a bite. So you can definitely feel that there's a slight bit of a bite there. And all I suggest, quite lightly, just give it 2 knocks with your hand. And that will stop it from coming undone again. Don't whack it like with a hammer or anything like that, because the only thing is you're probably going to end up damaging all this sort of area around here. And then when you come to take it off for the next time, you won't be able to. If you do have a situation where you can't get them off using a spanner, you can get a metal chisel, dig it into the side of here. We'll show you with a screwdriver. So dig it into there, hit it with a hammer, and that should release it. Sometimes with some of the some bungs, like on the Lex Motor Adrenaline, they had a situation where they were 12mm bungs, and it doesn't matter how softly you would go about taking them off, they would always mess up that bolt on the top. So 90% of those you would have to knock off with a hammer and a chisel. Obviously put this back on. When you put it, if you do take the side casing off and you do put it back on, you will feel that when you get to a certain point there is something pulling it towards the engine, and that is just because on the stator it has magnets on it, and the stator is for generating power for your battery. Remember to put on the cap on the side of the stator casing. Same with all these things, don't go nuts with them, just tighten them up enough so that they're not going to come off at any point in the future unless you physically want them to. Tighten up the viewing cap, same thing again. If you use a small screwdriver, you're likely to just spin it off in the cap, so that's why you need to use a large one. Now let's talk about why you would need to be doing your tappets on your motorbike if it's not coming up to the 2,000 miles. So one of the issues that you will come up against on these, if you are trying to start the bike and it's really hard to start, and yes, it may start in later on after you've been trying for a while, but if it takes you more than say 3-5 minutes to start your bike with the choke correctly, the same as you've been doing before, and it is just suddenly changed, the likelihood is this is going to be your first culprit. So you want to be checking the inlet manifold, because that is where the fuel goes into the engine, and the exhaust manifold, tap it so that that's where the exhaust gases leave the engine when the bike when it's finished its combustion process. Also, if your bike has started to slow down, like on a flat, if before it was doing 45 miles an hour and now it's starting to go down to say 40, this would also be your culprit as well. Remember, the servicing is key to all of these sort of bikes. If you don't do the servicing, the bike will not look after you. So look after your bike look after your bike so your bike can look after you. So I think that's it for this tutorial. I hope it has helped you out, and I hope you've learned something today. So subscribe to my channel if you've liked this video, hit that thumbs up or thumbs down, and hit that notification bell to stay updated to all my latest content. Now, up here, if you want to see more tutorials and how-tos on motorbiking, there's a video here. And if you want to see the playlist of all of my tutorials, the videos are down here. But please hit that subscribe icon right here to stay updated to all my latest content. But as always, ride safe.